Welcome to Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers. This week we get an update on the Kansitions program at Kansas State University with the director of the Farm and Ranch Transition Program, Ashlee Westerhold. She recently was at that Risk Profit Conference on the campus of K-State. We'll also have features from the Kansas Soybean Commission, Kansas Department of Agriculture, and Kansas Grain Sorghum, plus the weekly update from the Kansas Livestock Association and some market information from Pinion. Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers. Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farm and ranch families since 1919, kfb.org. And the Kansas Wheat Commission, lending in the adoption of profitable innovations from wheat, online at kswheat.com. Well, the U.S. House Committee on Financial Services advanced a bill that strengthens the oversight of foreign agricultural purchases. It was introduced by Oklahoma Representative Frank Lucas. It is the Agriculture Security Risk Review Act. That would add the Secretary of Agriculture as a member of the Committee on Foreign Investments in the U.S. That committee reviews the national security impact of foreign investments in the United States. The Secretary of the Treasury chairs that commission, and it has members from many departments: Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Commerce, Department of Defense, Department of State, Department of Energy, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, and the Office of Science and Technology Policy. Now, this legislation did pass in committee. It goes on now to the full House for consideration. Well, the latest numbers in USDA's cold storage report showed lower dairy and meat supplies and seasonally higher frozen fruits and vegetables. The report shows the total natural cheese stocks in refrigerated warehouse at the end of August down slightly from the previous month, but also up 1% from a year ago. Butter stocks down 12% from last month, but up 4% from a year ago. Now those red meat supplies in freezers up 1% from the previous month, but down 15% from where we were 1 year ago. And if you didn't hear, a Missouri farmland auction broke a previous record set in Iowa. 115 acres of land sold for a record amount. The Missouri farmland sale smashed the previous record of $30,000 an acre. The bill of sale from the Dyer and Fenner auctioneers said the record sale happened in Saline County, Missouri. A couple of farmers got into a bidding war, and in only 15 minutes, the 115 acres set a new record, $34,800 per acre. Now, the buyer was not an investor, but the winning bid came in from a farmer from neighboring Carroll County, Missouri. Area farmers say the competing bidder was a farmer whose home farm touches the land that's up for sale. The bidding started at $15,000 an acre for that piece of ground that's been in the same family for 4 generations, and those bids climbed very fast. We'll see how long that record might last. Well, stay with us. More coming up in just a moment. The Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Grain Sorghum, growers working together. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com. And we're joined now by Ashlee Westerhold, who heads up the Office of the Farm and Ranch Transition. Ashlee, good to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you.
It's been a year. You just kind of were getting things underway, kind of exploring all these opportunities. So let's kind of do a year in review, or
What have you learned in this first year going over the state?
Yeah, so as a part of my job, I have three main objectives. One is the Land Link program, so matching young beginning farmers and ranchers with those who have no one interested in coming back. And so that Land Link program has now been in existence for over a year. Learning lots of things with that Land Link program. We have many interested young folks who want to really start cow-calf operations. I would say a lot of my land seekers are heavily more on the cattle side. It kind of makes sense. They can dip into cattle without maybe the large investment of machinery. And so that's something interesting that I wasn't really expecting, where our landowners are the large crop producers who don't have someone interested in coming back. So there's been kind of a halt in matching just because we've had more cattle producers and we have more landowners who are heavily crop producers. But we are trying to open that up. We're getting new landowners in almost every other week, which is very exciting. We hope to have more matches. Actually, in the last year, we've had 18 landowners come into our system. 4 have matched out of the 18. And so they have a non-related party coming into their operation and being the next generation for their farm. So that's a pretty good win for us.
So talk about the process. Is it that difficult? Is it a long process when you try to make that match?
Yeah, so the matching process, we have applications that we require both land seekers and landowners to fill out. They're about 12-page application process. With the landowners, I actually sit down with the landowners and I go and see their operations and see what they're offering. And then I receive land seeker applications through the online system. And it's a long process. So what happens is I receive land seeker applications. I send them to landowners who I think would appreciate these applications, look through them if they match qualities. Values is a huge part of matching with farm families. And so we match those values. The landowners have the opportunity to contact those land seekers and start that process if they're interested. So it could be, we'll have many matches hopefully here in the next couple of years, but it does take a while.
Sure, absolutely. Ashlee, who is in the Office of Farm Ranch Transition here at the Kansas State, we're going to take a break, come back and talk more about maybe that generational move and what she's learned there. We'll do that in just a moment.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Livestock Association, supporting members' business interests and meeting consumer demands. KLA.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. And Kansas Corn, building the future at kansascorn.com.
And Ashlee Westerhold is joining us. She heads up the Office of Farm and Ranch Transition. We've talked about some of that land link, but also, one thing that's kind of been elusive is trying to help move maybe from one generation to the other, or even maybe related or non-related operators. What have you learned there?
Yeah, so another big part of my job is these one-on-one consultations with farm families. It could be with a related party, it could be non-related. So I've been working with farm families across the state. I actually have worked with over 60 families in the last year. I am learning so much about farm families, farm family dynamics, and what are those big obstacles that families are facing when transitioning from one generation to the next. We're finding that a lot of the farm families think that taxes are their biggest obstacle in these transition process. However, it's more of those family dynamics that are the sticky wicket. They are really trying to manage those generational differences and expectations, which can be very hard for transitioning the farm from one generation to the next. We're seeing millennials really like a work-life balance. And how does that translate into becoming the successor of the farm if you want to work an 8 to 5 or take a family vacation? And so we're trying to manage those expectations of the older generation for that next generation. And how does that work when it's agriculture and you're up to what nature gives you?
Right. We'll talk about I guess, again, that process, and what other things have you learned other than getting to kind of know more farm families, but is there maybe one thing in particular that is kind of a common denominator, or is everybody different?
So a common denominator is just a lack of communication when it comes to families. And I think a lot of families were very good about talking about things that we're comfortable approaching. So how's the weather? Farmers are very good about how did your corn do this year? Did you get any rain? But we're not great about setting goals and vocalizing goals, talking about our values. And I would say every family that I've met with, there's some barrier of communication. And they don't know how to ask the right questions, or they don't know how to answer questions because they've never been asked those questions before. So I would say I'm learning with the families on better ways of handling communication, setting up family meeting times, and setting up differences between having a planning meeting versus a long-term planning. So what are we going to do this week? And we've set a week plan, but every quarter we're going to have a plan about the big picture. And so if you are The Office fans, you know that at some point there was Jim, who was the manager of day-to-day, and Michael Scott was the manager of big picture. How do we do that when we can incorporate it into the farm? So the big picture is 5 years. What do we want the farm to look like? Day-to-day is what people are most comfortable talking about, but actually being intentional about setting those big picture meetings, talking to family members about retirement or slowing down, and what the finances are. I think a lot of people are in the dark when they join an operation about where mom and dad are with their finances. And that can pose a lot of issues when they're trying to buy out mom and dad and they don't realize there's debt associated with that operation. And mom and dad also, if they are going to slow down, have to pay for that in some way of retirement. And what will that look like? And that poses a lot of issues that we've been seeing. So
how can folks kind of get a hold of you, go through some of this, whether they land or even just those generational changes of operations?
Yeah, so my office is open to all Kansans. I sometimes dip into Nebraska, but it is open for all Kansas operations. They contact me through my phone number is 785-532-4526. I am the only person that answers my phone, so it will be me. If I am not in the office, leave me a voicemail. Another way to contact me is my email, and it's agkansitions@ksu.edu. And so maybe you can have it linked in the show notes for people, and that way they can contact me.
Sure. Very good. Actually, always great to catch up with you. I look forward to this maybe next year, too, for another year and see what happens.
Yeah, I hope that our numbers are even greater and that we're making really great progress across the state and really ending the stigma of postponing transitioning.
Sure.
And that's another goal of mine, is making sure people start getting comfortable with these conversations.
Very good. Ashlee Westerhold, who heads up the Office of Farm and Ranch Transition here at at K-State. So she has joined us. We'll have more coming up in just a moment.
Premier Farm and Home has what you need to make your lawn the best in the neighborhood.
Hi, I'm Ken. We choose Premier Farm and Home for the professional look that we do ourselves.
Feel free to stop in. You can also visit our website at heycow.com.
Hi everyone, Maddie Meyer here with the Kansas Grain Sorghum Update. Starting off with the crop progress report from the USDA, a majority of the sorghum crop remains in good condition. Currently, 63% of the crop has headed out compared to 50% last year. The total harvest is projected to be at over 3 million acres, up 13% from last year. Yields are forecasted to be at 73 bushels an acre compared to 2022's 34 bushels. This month, we've really hit the ground running across the state of Kansas, connecting with our growers, leaders, and industry partners. We attended the High Plains Journal Sorghum U Wheat U in Wichita, where our very own Kansas Grain Sorghum Producers Association President Kent Winter and Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission Chairman Brent Peterson joined wheat farmers Michael Peters and Brent Olek for a farmer panel where they discussed farm policy, management practices, and more. We also heard a lunchtime keynote from KWCH Chief Meteorologist Ross Jansen, and the afternoon rounded out with multiple breakout sessions focused on soil health, market outlooks, and pest management. Kansas grain sorghum leaders also attended the Flickner Innovation Farms Field Day event over in Mound Ridge. The Flickner farm utilizes technology that will allow for more sustainable practices, and this field day really highlighted these items. Attendees were able to see equipment demonstrations as well as hear reports from K-State research and extension specialists and graduate students. We look forward to visiting Manhattan soon to host our very own Commission Budget Board meetings held on September 1st at the Kansas Department of Agriculture. Thank you, and stay tuned for next time.
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, but how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and Liberty Link that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.
What if U.S. soybean meal were more than a commodity? If seed companies and the soybean checkoff built a better variety? That future is here. The time is now. To meet end-user demands, the soybean checkoff is investing in the compositional quality of soybeans, including meal. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the soybean checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Several years ago, the Kansas Department of Agriculture began a new program to help us shine a spotlight on those in the agriculture community who go above and beyond to serve others and the industry, and we call it Kansas Ag Heroes. Once again this year, we received some wonderful nominations, and we selected several standouts and recognized them during the Ag Growth Summit on August 17th. Those selected for special honors included Dr. Stephen Blythe, a large animal veterinarian in Wabaunsee, who runs a mobile vet clinic and is also a sale barn vet, a rancher, and a volunteer firefighter. Chad Bontrager has helped feed his Holton community by opening a grocery store along with other food and agriculture businesses, which offer locally sourced food to the public. Teresa Brandenburg of Russell was the first woman president of the Kansas Soybean Association and now serves as the chairwoman of the board, advocating for agriculture locally and on the national level. Steve and Colleen Duell and their sons Aaron and Adam serve their community in Sherman County in many ways, including serving on the county fair board and many volunteer projects that encourage growth and community pride. Dan Nevius is a leader in the roping and barrel racing community near Spring Hill, opening up his arena for learning and competitive opportunities to encourage rodeo activities in the community. Ron Supas of Dighton has spent many years promoting Kansas agricultural commodities as a member of the Kansas Wheat Commission and was recently seated as the Wheat Foods Council chairman as he promotes wheat around the world. You can see more about the 2023 Kansas Ag Heroes, including other nominees, on our website at agriculture.ks.gov/agheroes. KDA appreciates all those who submitted nominations, and we are especially thankful for these Kansas Ag Heroes and the thousands more we know stepped up to serve this year.
Grain sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
It's Commodity Commission's election time again in Kansas. Soybean producers in the state seeking to influence how the checkoff returns value to their operations are invited to campaign for a seat on the Kansas Soybean Commission. This year, the Soybean Commission seat for combined districts 1, 2, and 3 in western Kansas is up for election, as are the 2 statewide at-large seats. Interested individuals have until November 30th, 2023 to meet the filing deadline. Terms begin April 1st, 2024, following the election process. To be eligible, candidates must gather 20 signatures from farming peers with no more than 5 signatures from any one county. Signatures may be submitted online, by paper, or both. Online petitions can be found at www.agriculture.ks.gov/KGCvoter. Paper packets are available from the Kansas Department of Agriculture or from Kansas Soybean directly. The application form is also posted at www.kansassoybeans.org/forms. Per Kansas Department of Agriculture guidelines, candidates 18 and older must have been actively engaged in growing soybeans within the preceding 5 years to be eligible and may only represent the district of their primary residence. The Commission meets in person 3 times annually with additional virtual meetings and travel commitments throughout the year. Time is volunteered, but travel expenses are reimbursable per KSC policy. The primary responsibility of being a commissioner is attending the December meeting where funding proposals are presented and checkoff investments are decided. Questions about commissioner expectations may be directed to the Kansas Soybean Office.
Kansas Corn reminds you that E15 fuel is the right choice for every kind of driver. For the car enthusiast, E15 has higher octane. For the thrifty driver, E15 is priced lower than regular unleaded. For the nature lover, E15 provides cleaner air. For the shopper who buys local, E15 has more ethanol from our Kansas corn farms. Choose E15 for a higher octane, lower price, cleaner American fuel. Message from the Kansas Corn Commission. Learn more at kscorn.com.
U.S. Senators Debbie Stabenow of Michigan and Mike Crapo of Idaho have introduced bipartisan legislation to address the critical shortage of veterinarians in rural communities. The Rural Veterinary Workforce Act would provide tax benefits to veterinarians to encourage them to practice in rural communities. In 2003, Congress established the Veterinary Medicine Loan Repayment Program to address this shortage by assisting qualifying veterinarians with student loan repayment in exchange for a 3-year commitment to practice in underserved communities. However, the program currently is subject to a significant federal withholding tax, which limits available resources and the reach of its benefits. The Rural Veterinary Workforce Act would provide an exemption from the federal income withholding tax for payments received under the program and similar state programs, helping give more veterinarians the opportunity to practice in rural communities where their services are needed most. This change would reflect similar exemptions provided to physicians and other human health practitioners. Senator Crapo said addressing the overly burdensome taxes on the Veterinary Medicine Loan Repayment Program will help improve access to rural veterinary care while also strengthening local economies and protecting the safety of our national food supply. The bipartisan bill was co-sponsored by 12 senators, including Senator Jerry Moran.
Imagine turning soybean oil, used cooking oils, and waste animal fats into fuel so amazing it drives U.S. jobs and our economy forward. Learn more about biodiesel at americasadvancedbiofuel.com.
This is Jake McCall with Pinion Ag. As harvest continues, we have seen fairly muted price action in the grain and oilseed markets. Yield reports have revealed many surprises in both directions throughout the country as we start to discover the results of a summer with very interesting weather patterns. The corn market is reluctant so far to make any decisive moves after putting in contract lows at $4.67 3/4 last week and has mostly stayed in a 30-cent range between $4.70 and $5 since the beginning of August. We did have a neutral to bullish ethanol report this week, with production up 3% from last week and 18% from last year, while at the same time stocks also increased, reflecting a weakened demand picture on that front. Soybeans have been oscillating between technical factors on the charts after dropping $1 in the past 30 days from recent highs. One of the biggest factors facing the grains at this point is that the Mississippi River levels are severely down, causing a lack of export capability as we move into harvest. This is seen clearly in basis levels at the river terminals, widening by over $1 in some cases, as elevators try to discourage farmers from delivering out of the fields. The markets will be watching closely the quarterly stocks report that will give us a look into what the USDA estimates our current production levels at. In the livestock markets, both live and feeder cattle have faced headwinds recently, with weakness in the stock market suggesting possible demand questions. Certainly, cattle feeders are nervous to pay record prices for calves that will require steep premiums in order to make money when they go to the packer. But for now, cautious optimism reigns, with no end in sight into shrinking cow herds across the country. In outside markets, crude oil continues on a very strong bullish trend that it has held since late June, a factor that grain should not ignore, as King crude can often correlate strongly with the ethanol and biodiesel industries. The dollar, however, has also seen a strong rally in the same time period as a flight to quality in uncertain times, and that contributes to the export dilemma American farmers are facing, making the U.S. a more expensive option on the global market, especially keeping in mind another expected record crop in South America. If you have any questions about marketing or risk management for your operation, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 888-452-8751. I'm Jake McCall with Pinion Ag, and I hope you have a great and productive day.
That'll do it for our program this week. Be social with us at KansasAgReport.net or on our other social media channels. We welcome in October and the final quarter of 2023. I'm Ken Rogers. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on the Kansas Ag Report.
Kansas Corn reminds you that E15 fuel is the right choice for every kind of driver. For the car enthusiast, E15 has higher octane. For the thrifty driver, E15 is priced lower than regular unleaded. For the nature lover, E15 provides cleaner air. For the shopper who buys local, E15 has more ethanol from our Kansas corn farms. Choose E15 for a higher octane, lower price, cleaner American fuel. Message from the Kansas Corn Commission. Learn more at kscorn.com.
Sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.